"She has sent it back, your grace," said the housekeeper. "The menu card with a note." The Duke of Edenholm looked up from the seating plan. "A note. She thanks your grace very much for the jest, and says she will take her dinner in the schoolroom as usual, and hopes the evening goes off well." Lucien was on his feet before he had decided to stand, and the card was in his hand, and it was the right card. The servants' hall bill of fare for the night of the Edenholm ball, printed as it was printed every year, roast beef and a boiled fowl and plum pudding, and along the foot of it, in his own black ink, in his own unmistakable hand, "Guest of honor Miss C. Meade. To be seated at the head, and to be the first served." "Mrs. Rowe, did the card go up to her alone?" "It did, your grace. The servants' hall have their own." "Then she believes I sent her a servant's menu." "Your grace." The housekeeper's mouth was doing something complicated. "With respect, she has been 3 years in this house. She dines in the schoolroom off a tray because the great table does not want her, and the hall table is not hers to sit at, and there is not a governess in England who does not know exactly what a servant's menu means when it is sent up to her room. She did not read the bottom line. She read the top." Lucien looked at the card for a long moment. "Where is she?" "Where she always is at 4 o'clock, your grace." She was in the schoolroom, and she had the window open in November because his niece could not bear a closed room, and she was on her knees on the boards with a slate and a length of string, teaching a 7-year-old the difference between a circle and everything else. Sophia saw him first and did not run to him, because Sophia did not run to anybody yet. She held up the string. "That is a very fine circle," Lucien said. "Miss Meade, a word." Charity Meade got up and shook out a gown that had been turned at the cuffs, and there was chalk on her sleeve and a great deal of composure on her face. "Your grace, I hope my note was not impertinent." "Your note was a masterpiece of manners, and it has ruined my afternoon. Come out to the gallery." In the gallery she stood with her hands folded and waited to be corrected, which he had learned in 3 years, was what she did whenever anybody in the house paid her the slightest attention. "You read the top of the card," Lucien said. "Read the bottom." He gave it to her. He watched her eyes travel down and stop and go back and stop again, and he watched the color come up her throat. "That is your grace's hand." "It is." "Then somebody has," she stopped. "Your grace, if this is a kindness, I beg you will not. I am a governess. If a duke seats a governess at the head of his table before 80 people, they will not think you generous, they will think me clever, and there is only one word they use for a woman they think is clever in that particular way." Her voice was perfectly quiet. "I have my character to keep. It is the only thing I own outright." Lucien had ruled Edenholm for 9 years, and he had faced down a Lord Lieutenant and 2 bishops and a mob at a turnpike, and he found himself, in his own gallery, with nothing whatever to say. "You believe I have not thought of that," he said at last. "I believe your grace has never had to." She was right, and it was insufferable, and he liked her better for it than he had liked anybody in years. He walked in the wet park for an hour afterward, and thought about the 3 years. She had come to Edenholm in the January after the Ravensbourne packet was lost in the Irish Sea, and his brother and his brother's wife with it. He had been left a dukedom he already had, a house he already hated, and a 4-year-old who had stopped speaking. Lucien had done what dukes do. He had sent for the best. 3 eminent women had come from London at 40 guineas apiece, and each had lasted a month, and each had explained on leaving that the case was hopeless and the establishment irregular. The 4th applicant had arrived on the carrier's cart in the rain with 1 box, a letter from a country rector, and no fashionable connection of any kind. and had said, when he asked what method she proposed to employ, "None at all, your grace, until she likes me." It had taken Charity Mead 11 weeks to be liked. In the 12th week, Sophia had said her name. He had stood outside that door and listened to a small voice say Mead, and had gone away down the passage and sat on the stairs like a stable boy, and had never told a soul. After that, he had begun to notice things, in the way a man notices whether he has no intention of going out in. That she taught the lodge-keeper's daughters on Sunday afternoons for nothing, and had never once mentioned it to him, and had bought the copybooks out of £40 a year. That she would not accept a shawl at Christmas, but would accept a book, and had chosen, out of 11,000 volumes, a treatise on the drainage of light soils, because she had wanted to understand what his tenants argued about at the rent dinner. That when the county came to Edenholm, she did not appear, ever, and that he had begun to find rooms full of people intolerable in a way he had not before, and had eventually worked out why. Because the one person in the house who said true things was upstairs eating off a tray. That her hands were always cold, because the schoolroom fire was lit at 10, and she gave the first hour of coals to the child. He had written the line on the card in October, sitting alone with the seating plan and the housekeeper's lists, and he had written it before he had let himself understand what he meant by it. Guest of honor, to be seated at the head and to be the first served. He had meant, come down. He had meant a thing he had been 2 years failing to find any words for at all. She had read, "You are staff." Lucian went back into the house and sent for the card again, and looked at it, and understood that a man who says a thing so obliquely that it can be mistaken for an insult has not said it at all. Then on the Tuesday, 5 days before the ball, Lady Trennance arrived at Edenholm with a lawyer. She was Sophia's grandmother on the mother's side. She was 71 and formidable, and she had not written in 2 years. She sat in the yellow drawing-room with her gloves on and came to the point over the first cup. "The child is to come to me at Bath, Edenholm. Mr. Vesey has drawn the papers. I shall not make a business of it if you are sensible. She is settled here. She is settled in a schoolroom with a hired woman, in a house with no mistress, in the care of a bachelor who is out at quarter sessions 3 days in 5. Lady Trennance set down her cup. "I have been given to understand that the arrangement is more irregular than that. I am told the household talks. I am told a governess is to be seated at the head of your table at a public ball. Do not trouble to deny it. Your own housekeeper's sister is my woman's cousin, and I have the whole of it." Her eyes were not unkind, which made it worse. "I am an old woman, and I am fighting for my daughter's daughter. If the matter goes before the court, that card will go before it too, and every servant in this county will be asked what they thought it meant. And whatever they say, sir, it will not be the governess who survives it." Lucian sat very still. "You would break her to get the child." "I would do a great deal to get the child," said Lady Trennance. "I do not require to break anybody. I require you to be reasonable and to let the woman go, and to let me take Sophia to Bath, and then there is no card and no court and no talk. That is the whole of my terms, and they are better than you deserve." He asked for 3 days. She gave him 5, which was worse, because it meant she was certain. And on the Thursday morning, before he had said one word of it to anybody, there was a letter on his desk in a small, neat hand, and it began by thanking him for 3 years of unfailing courtesy, and it gave him a month's notice, and it did not mention Lady Trennance at all, because it did not have to. He found her packing the copybooks. "You have heard. Servants' halls hear everything, your grace, and I have always been half a servant, which is the only advantage of the position. She did not stop packing. It is quite simple. If I am gone, there is nothing to say. She keeps the child or she does not, and it will be decided on the merits and not on gossip. That is worth £40 a year. It is not worth you. Charity Mead put down the copybook then and looked at him. And for the first time in 3 years, he saw her angry. "Your Grace, do not," she said. "Please do not say a kind thing to me in this room, because I am within an inch of behaving very badly, and I have to walk out of that door in a month with my character intact and no other place to go, and I cannot afford an inch." Her hands were shaking. "Write me a good reference. That is what I want from you. Write it truthfully and do not make it warm, and I shall get a situation in Northumberland where nobody has heard of Edenholm, and Sophia will grow up and forget me, and that is how these things end. They always end so. I have known it since the day I came. And if a man wished them to end otherwise, then he should have said so," she said, "instead of writing it on the bottom of a menu." Lucian went out of the schoolroom, down the stairs, through the long gallery and into the muniment room, and stayed there until 2 in the morning with a candle and a box of papers, and he did not send for his lawyer, because for once he did not need one. He needed a copybook. The Edenholm ball was on the Saturday. 81 to dinner in the state room, 400 candles, the county in its best, and Lady Trennance in grey satin at his right hand, having accepted the invitation for reasons Lucian understood perfectly. At the moment the doors were to open, the Duke of Edenholm stood up on the top step of the state-room stair, which was a thing no Duke of Edenholm had done in living memory, and the whole hall stopped. "Before we go in," he said, "there is a card I must correct in public, since it was talked of in public." He held it up. "This is the servants' hall bill of fare for tonight. Along the bottom of it, in my hand, is written, 'Guest of honor, Miss C. Mead, to be seated at the head and first served.' It was sent up to her in October. She read it as an insult and returned it with a note thanking me for the jest, and she was quite right to, because a man who writes the most important line of his life in the margin of a printed card has only himself to thank for being misunderstood." Nobody moved. Charity Mead was standing at the back of the hall by the green baize door in the turned gown, because Mrs. Rowe had brought her down and had, Lucian suspected, physically prevented her from going up again. "I am asked why she should be honored. I shall answer it once, and then we shall dine." He took a folded paper from his coat. 3 years ago this house received a 4-year-old who had lost her father and mother in the Irish Sea and had stopped speaking altogether. 3 eminent women were engaged at 40 guineas, and each pronounced the case hopeless within a month. The 4th came on the carrier's cart with 1 box and said she would attempt nothing until she was liked. In the 12th week she was liked. I heard it happen through a door. He unfolded the paper. "This is a page from a copybook. It is dated the 9th of this month, and it is in a hand of 7 years old, and it says, 'Miss Mead opens the window because I do not like doors that are shut. She lights the fire at 10 and says she is not cold, but she is.' There are 11 more pages in that copybook, and every one of them is an account of somebody putting a small person before herself, written down by the small person who noticed." Somewhere in the hall a woman said, "Oh," and did not apologize for it. "Lady Trennance," Lucian turned to her, "you came to Edenholm to take Sophia to Bath, and you told me that if the matter went before a court, that card would go before it too, and that whatever the servants swore, it would not be the governess who survived it. You were right about the world and wrong about me. So let us have no court. Let us have the truth in front of the whole county instead, and let them make of it what they like." He came down 2 steps. "The copybook is yours to read tonight, ma'am, and Mr. Vesey may read it with you. You will find in it exactly what kind of household this is. And if, When you have read it, you still wish to take her, then I shall not fight you in chancery. I shall bring her to Bath myself on the first fine day and stay a fortnight, and come again at Easter, and every Easter after, because she is your daughter's daughter, and I have been 9 years too proud to remember it." He paused. "But you will not buy her with Miss Meade. That price is not on offer." Lady Trenance's chin came up. She was silent for a full 10 seconds, which in that woman was a considerable concession. "Give me the copybook," she said. He gave it to her. Then he walked the length of the hall, past 81 people, to the green baize door. "Miss Meade." "Your Grace," she was white to the lips, "you should not have. You told me that a man who wished it to end otherwise should have said so. I'm about to say so, and it will be badly done, because I have had 9 years of saying things well about drains and nothing at all about this." Lucien took her cold hand in both of his in front of the county, and did not lower his voice. "You have been 3 years in my house, and I have been the whole of that time discovering that I cannot be in a room where you are not for Sophia's sake. Sophia has been the excuse. I have used a grieving little girl as an excuse to stand in a doorway, and I am ashamed of it, and I shall not do it any more." "Your Grace." "Lucien," he said, "you will need it. Charity Meade, I am asking you before every witness I could assemble at short notice, so that no one may ever say it was arranged in a corridor. Not guest of honor, mistress of this house, and my wife, and if you refuse me, I shall write you the truthful reference you asked for, and it will be 6 pages long and unusable, because there is no word in it that is not warm." The hall was so quiet that he could hear the candles. "You wrote it on a menu," Charity said, and her voice broke on the last word. "I did. It was the coward's way, and the paper was to hand." He turned her hand over. "Say something, anything. Say the fire is lit at 10 and you are not cold." "I am not cold," she said, "at all," and put her other hand over his, and the state-room stair of Edenholm heard a sound it had not heard since the old Duke's day, which was 81 people applauding at once. They were married in the chapel at Edenholm on the 4th of February. Lady Trenance read the copybook that night and every page of it, and at midnight sent for a glass of Madeira and her lawyer, and told him to go home. She did not take Sophia to Bath. Sophia went to her at Easter, and every Easter after, with her uncle and her aunt, and came back each time with a great deal of information about the Bath waters and her grandmother's opinions of them. The servants' hall bill of fare for that November was framed and hung, at the Duchess's insistence, in the schoolroom rather than the gallery, where visitors would not see it, and where a small person practicing her circles would. And once a year, on the night of the Edenholm ball, the Duke of Edenholm still had a card sent up to the schoolroom before dinner. Roast beef, a boiled fowl, plum pudding, and along the foot in black ink, guest of honor, to be seated at the head and to be the first served. She came down every time.